The first question, the spirit in a child. There is a bit of a background. My son is 12 years old, born in China, and we adopted him when he was 16 months. Since he was very young, he has had various experiences, unusual to us, like sleepwalking, night terrors, and seeing terrifying things in the night. When he was 7, he started having migraines and described seeing colors, a bright white light, and feeling tingling sensations. That year, he got more and more depressed, angry, feeling hopeless, lonely, and missing his birth parents. I feel very lucky he opened up to me and shared he often felt like being a ghost, like he didn't exist. One afternoon, after stiffening up and trembling immensely, he described getting a very blurry sight and seeing a portal. He told me sometimes he heard a voice saying things like, "You will come back. Don't give up. On. Go to a higher status. And when the 3 awakens, you will awaken." He also described explosions in his head like an earthquake or volcano. And one night his heart was beating so fast, it felt like his brain and his heart switched. At first I thought this all had to do with trauma, dissociation. At that time I was not familiar with spirituality. He opened me up to this. I learned a lot and began to see his experiences from this other perspective. Question. Can you please give me some clarification? Do these experiences have anything to do with spiritual awakening? In a recent YouTube video, you described the force being active in you in your childhood. Can you tell us something about your experiences? Is it more common now for children to have these experiences? Oh, yes. Okay, so before responding more specifically, do these experiences have anything to do with spiritual awakening? I'm a little hesitant to say yes, although it, of course, undoubtedly speaks for itself. What am I hesitant about is so as not to create some kind of dissociation in yourself now, which then will be inevitably projected onto your son. Adopted or not, he is your son, he is your responsibility until he is old enough to renounce that responsibility. What I'm trying to say here is that spiritual awakening, if we really understand what that means, is a natural progression of the maturation of the human soul. Therefore, if we speak about spiritual awakening as something extraordinary outside of that, what otherwise everything is nice and dandy kind of life goes on, then we do disservice and we continuously perpetuate these biases of spiritual versus non-spiritual, this or that. Spiritual awakening is not some weird, unusual, or whatever that may be, extraordinary thing. Yes, it may be experienced as such, and for the right reasons, but again, first of all, please welcome this understanding that awakening is just as growing up. If awakening doesn't take place, then a growing up did not take place. We could say that in the same manner, in the same way. Life lived without awakening is life arrested at a certain level of development. No more, no less. It's arrested development. Therefore, in every culture, especially these ancient tribal cultures, they all spoke in one voice of this, what is known as in, let's say, Vedic or Brahmanic spirituality as twice born. You read, then you read this and that, it's twice born, twice born. It's a kind of a very common cultural epithet. Or twice born, da, 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 da. It's reflecting that understanding present in the culture. The twice born means not just born to the womb of the mother, but also born. Then, of course, in more orthodox settings here, we may be too easily associate and relate that with, being baptized or this or that, somehow initiated in this or that religious way. But twice born is not quite the same. It's more like being initiated in a sense of initiated into the domain of one's spirit. And that means twice born. Just as we don't die once. In the same way, just as there are two births, physical birth, and then there is this birth into the domain of who we are. There is also two deaths, not just physical death in terms of leaving it all back to where it belonged to all this time, but dying to these notions, ideas, and calcified husk that was needed when the soul was growing and going through the painful phases of maturation associated with the age of puberty and adolescence. But if we remain arrested at that level of adolescence, it's a sad picture, a calamity. We spoke about it only recently, not here, how observing the teenagers at play and how they are self-absorbed, constantly, oblivious to others' needs most of the time. Not that all are painted with the same brush, but by and large because it is at least justified in terms of the growth of their sense of self. Their egoic sense is getting that protective shell so that they can grow into that, into their world, create that world, which has the husk to be discarded one way or another, or sooner or later. So this is the beginning of a response to you here. And you're asking further, mentioning some of the videos that I spoke to about my childhood experiences, and I don't want to go into my childhood experiences too much, but yes, what can I say? I don't want to make myself sound special, but I don't know anything what falls into the category of normal. Never ever I considered myself to be normal, usual, fitting. Always it was, if not Romeo and Juliet, then Tempest. If not this or that, it was a constant something. Dramas were all the time. Quiet dramas and real explicit dramas. And the beauty of all of that was finding its way through this heart, through these eyes, through these hands. Sometimes so painfully experienced, painfully because experiencing it and not knowing how to adequately convey and relate that. So that's what real childhood is about. Dumbing our kids, dumping them down, normalizing them. That's a terrible thing. So it's an extraordinary phase. Therefore, so much responsibility there in you as a parent of creating that safe container where the boundaries will be tested, where you will be thrown away with the boundaries, because that's also part and parcel of growing up. That's what mother's job is. It's an extraordinary job. The current rise of feminism threatens to destroy the meaning and the role of the mother, because it undermines that very important role. It belittles it. It almost makes the role of the mother on the level of some kind of biological necessity, which some discard as an anachronism, like I'm not a tribal woman. I want to fry my fish, and that's most important. Whereas the job of the mother is, there's nothing more glorious than that, nothing more profound. It's a continuous and constant sacrifice, and yet being firm, tough when it's needed. I don't know if it's more common now for children to have these experiences. I don't want to go into this. Yes, indigo children, maybe. Yes, world is becoming amazing because we really now is more out there in a sense, and in terms of shared information. If everything may be laid down there and neatly covered, and therefore very little we knew what's happening. Everything was veneered, glossed by that appearance, then all that is sort of very opposite of that. In fact, we are into another extreme, over glorification, over, and well, just think of the Me Too culture, Instagrams, selfies, TikTok, all that. Poor children, frankly. These teenagers, I can see that at home. It's a constant struggle. It's being a despot. It's being a bad cop all the time. It's having to put the foot down, the first. It's have to constantly spoil the fun. It's constantly being on guard, because it's so easy to let go. It's so easy to, okay, oh, well, another half an hour, another hour, another computer, just, no. We are in a state of war in that regard. War for our kids. We are in a state of who is going to win that war. Are they going to be deprived of full development and going to become this sort of cyber dogs, kind of undeveloped in the possibility of their senses are not coming into full bloom, are being dampened already there and then because they embody this world of fucked up, cyberspace. What can we do? So, learn from your son, but also take your role there. Your role is there as the mother to be an example, And whatever needs to be said, no guilt feeling, no feeling, oh, this and that. Very easy to fall into this. He's adopted. His karma is to be brought up in your family, being brought up by you. Be courageous, stand your ground. At some point you will tell him more than what he can understand right now. Whatever is the case, you need to be in charge. It's your job. So don't just suddenly go into this placidly, my son is now teaching me, he's awakened, and no. You're the mother now. You have to stand your ground. You have to be able to provide that safety container, and also at the same time so that he learns the principal, primal language of the heart. Then he will be equipped. Then he will heal his traumas and whatever that is. None of us are exempt. None. So know that and do your job with detachment. That's what the mother is for. Sorry for speaking on behalf of mothers. Should be speaking on behalf of fathers.